And again, hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. So, a bit about Shannon. Interested in Black history and eradicating racism against the Black community from an early age. Shannon's key interest and passion in these areas helped her realize that she must do all she could to educate others and raise awareness of the rich history of Black people. An enthusiast of reading, travel, and writing poetry, Shannon has an indescribable passion and thirst to not only know more about history in particular, slavery, historical and modern, but to educate people on these issues and to assist in stopping it from continuing. An honors graduate with a bachelor's degree in history and Caribbean studies from the University of Toronto, a master's degree in slavery studies from the University of Hull in the UK, a certificate in adult education from George Brown College, and currently undertaking her PhD at Queen's University. Shannon has expanded her knowledge and information about the Black history and the issues that her Black community faces both locally, here in Canada, and internationally. Apart from participating in conferences and workshops in relating to the Black experience and history in Canada, Shannon is currently the first vice president for the Ontario Black History Society, where she helps the organization preserve, celebrate, and spread the rich Black history of Ontario and Canada. Shannon is also the co-founder of Oyenuran Education Support, an educational organization created by herself and her husband, and she continues to use these platforms to teach young people about Black history. Shannon was born in Scarborough, Ontario, but is a longtime resident of Durham Region, and she currently resides in Pickering, Ontario with her husbands and their sons. Wow, what an amazing bio. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm going to
thanks.
pass it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. I hope everyone can see. Yes, awesome. So tonight, I just want to take, the time that I have to talk about Black History Month, talk about its origins, why it started, when it started, and also just, something we can talk about after is looking beyond Black History Month and looking to the future. So yeah, let's get into this. So I know we did the land acknowledgement, but I'm, calling in from the Durham region from Pickering. And I just want to respectfully acknowledge that I'm on the traditional lands of the Mississauga of Scugog Island, and also like to acknowledge the more than 14,000 Indigenous people who currently live in the Durham region right now. All right, so this is a quote by Marcus Garvey, Pan-Africanist, founder of Garveyism from Jamaica. And he said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So we always have to look back. We always have to look at the past to not only find out what happened then, but to understand how what happened then, dictates our present and our future. So always best that we look back. So I'm gonna go through this. I'm not gonna spend too much time on, Canada's enslavement history, and I'll get to that. But I just want to preface it that, our history did not start with enslavement. I hope we all know that. We were kings and queens in Africa and different African kingdoms, the Mali kingdom, Egypt, Axum, and so many others. And we had thriving communities, and we were innovative and talented and smart in math, science, architecture, so many different things. So I just want to preface that what I'm going to say with that we are so much more than being enslaved, but we do have to acknowledge and talk about enslavement because that's how we did get over into the Americas, as we call it, right? So yeah, let's go over. So I just wanted to show this quick diagram of some, or image of some individuals and groups that are still important to Canadian history. We have over 400 years of Black history in Canada. And the first Black person in Canada that was recorded and documented was in 1605, and his name was Matthew da Costa. Now, what was interesting and unique about Matthew da Costa was that we know that transatlantic slave trade was happening, we know that slavery was happening, but Matthew da Costa was actually a free Black man. He was hired as a translator and an interpreter for Samuel de Champlain for his 1605 excursion to Canada. So he worked as an interpreter between the French and the Indigenous people that were here. So that's Matthew da Costa. Now, I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards, but Canada did have enslavement as well. We did have over 200 years of slavery right here in Canada. Sometimes we think it was, just an American thing, but we did have over 200 years of slavery. And the first recorded Black person was just a young boy. He was 6 years old. He was kidnapped from his home. There's some reports that he was either from Guinea or Madagascar, kidnapped, brought over to New France. So we used to call Canada New France. And in 1628, he was the first recorded Black person that was enslaved in Canada. Now, we don't know what his original name was, but the people who kidnapped him, baptized him in the Catholic faith, and gave him the name Olivier Lejeune. So that was in 1628. Now I'm jumping all the way to the 1700s, almost 1800s, 1783. Hopefully we've heard about the Black Loyalists. So during the American Revolution, which took place from 1775 to 1783, the British made a call and promised land, freedom, and rights to enslaved and free Black people, so African American men and women, in exchange for their services during the war. So, as you can imagine, to get your freedom back and to have land at that time, and even now, as we're seeing, with the housing crisis and everything, how important it is to have land and property, so to speak. So that was obviously very important to these enslaved and free African American people. And thousands of them took up the call and joined the British side and fought against the Americans. Now, the British lost, but at the end of the war, about 3,000 or so Black loyalists, as they were called, were actually sent to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Um, they arrived, they got their freedom, the land that they were promised, they got it, but it took sometimes a few years. And things weren't rosy, so to speak. They still face racism and discrimination, and just faced a really hard time in Halifax. Um, a few years later, about 1,200 of the Black loyalists wanted to be sent somewhere else, and they were actually sent to Sierra Leone in West Africa and actually helped to establish Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone today. So there's so much more to their story, but I just wanted to highlight, scratch the surface of the Black loyalists. Next, we have the Trelawney Maroons. Now, uh, fast forward, I don't want to give the whole story. There's so much to their story, but basically the Maroons were enslaved African people who didn't want to be enslaved and ran away to the mountains in Jamaica and created their own communities. And they were in constant war with the British or the Spanish, who between Spain and Britain overtook the island of Jamaica many times. But during this time, they got into what was called the Second Maroon War with the British, and that was in December of 1795. They lost to the British, and then one of the conditions of them losing was that the Maroons, the Trelawney Maroons, were to be exiled to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now, they arrived in Halifax on July 22nd, 1796, and they worked on roads, they built government buildings. If you ever visit Nova Scotia or from Nova Scotia, the Citadel that is in Halifax, the Maroons built that as well. So they were only there though for 4 years, because in 1800 they actually asked to be sent somewhere else, just again dealing with racism, discrimination, the cold weather, just everything. And they too were sent to Freetown, Sierra Leone, just like the Black Loyalists. So that's a bit about the Maroons, lots more to their story, but that's just the surface. And then the Underground Railroad, I'm sure we've all heard of the Underground Railroad, where thousands of African American men women, children made their way on foot using a series of routes and just different ways to get to freedom. So whether it was in the northern states, so places like New York, Vermont, Connecticut, or um, further north to Canada as well. So that's the Underground Railroad. And then just jumping ahead to the 1900s, 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where we had this mass migration of Black people from the Caribbean and African countries. Prior to the late 1950s, 1960s, Canada had very racist immigration policies, but this started to change. And, 60s, 70s and 80s, we saw a lot of people coming to Canada from the Caribbean. So I just wanted to give that brief overview. There's so much more to it, but that will have to be for another session. Um, but yeah, as I mentioned, Canada did have enslavement for over 200 years. So from the early 1600s all the way till 1834, August 1st, when it was abolished throughout the British Empire. So yeah, that's a bit about the background of, that I wanted to just highlight and, let us know about that. We did have enslavement in Canada. Um, Again, it's sort of a myth or people don't know about it, but I just wanted to highlight that. But let's, get into the origins of Black History Month and why it started and who started it. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he's an African American man who was born in December 1875 and passed away in 1950. He was a historian and he founded what was called Negro History Week in 1926. Now, he created this week just to encourage the study of African American history, the accomplishments, the achievements of African Americans. And he really just wanted people to take the time to understand the history. We hear a lot about the history of Black people in the United States and how far it goes back and just how rich it is. And he really just wanted to highlight that. So he created this Negro History Week. And he also, I hear a lot of questions too all the time about why February, why the shortest month of the year, but he did that because for Abraham Lincoln, who was one of the presidents of the United States, and Frederick Douglass, who was a former enslaved man, Black man, and gained his freedom. So both of their birthdays are actually in February. So Carter G. Woodson really appreciated them and liked what they stood for and what they were trying to do for the African American community. So he created this week to be alongside their birthdays. So that's why it's in February, not because it's the shortest month of the year, but specifically because he wanted to kind of honor Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. So yeah, so that's Carter G. Woodson. He really was just dedicated to having African American Black history told and celebrated, and it turned into a month. So Black History Month in the 1970s in America, and over here in Canada around that same time too. But we'll chat more about that soon. So I just want to show a video now that gives us some more background of Black History Month in the United States. Just want to make sure that is up.
February is Black History Month. But why? Where did Black History Month come from? It began with this man, Carter G. Woodson, a historian and writer. Woodson noticed that his people were, quote, overlooked, ignored, and even suppressed by the writers of history textbooks and the teachers who use them, end quote. So he started a Black History Week in 1926, and people celebrated it enthusiastically. They started Black History clubs, and teachers started recognizing the contributions of Black Americans in their classrooms. He chose February, by the way, because it held the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two men he believed had done tremendous work for the rights and liberties of African Americans. It took another 50 years, though, for Black History Month to become officially recognized by our government. The president at the time, Gerald Ford, said that we should seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Here's the funny thing, though. Carter G. Woodson hoped that someday people would no longer celebrate Black History Month. He saw the day when it would no longer be necessary, when finally we would see Black history in America for what it really is, an essential part of American history.
All right, so that's the origins of Black History Month in the United States. So let's now turn to our country, our home, Canada, and look at how Black History Month got started here. So the Ontario Black History Society, I've been a member for, oh my gosh, maybe 8 years or so, and the VP for the last 6 years or so. Um, but they've been around since 1978, and they're we're an organization that we try to preserve and promote and celebrate Black history in our province and across Canada as well. Now, in 1979, the Ontario Black History Society, so just a year after they were founded, approached the City of Toronto to celebrate and acknowledge Black History Month in Canada. And they also advocated and worked towards having Black History Month recognized and celebrated in the province of Ontario in 1993. Now, that brings me to Dr. Jean Augustine. Hopefully, we've all heard of Jean Augustine. She was the first Black woman MP in federal government. And in 1995, after months of bringing this idea and approaching people to support her, she brought this motion of having Black History Month celebrated across the country. Now, this, of course, had to be voted on in the House of Commons. So in 1995, December specifically, she brought the motion forward for it to be voted on, and 305 MPs voted yes for Black History Month to be recognized across Canada. So we've been celebrating Black History Month officially in Canada since February of 1996. So, largely in part because of Jean Augustine and, people like the Ontario organizations like the Ontario Black History Society, and just so many other people who worked hard to have it recognized across the country. Now, Senator Donald Oliver, in February 2008, he wanted to now have Black History Month just recognized at that top level. So we know that our Senate is like the top level of government in Canada. So him being a senator, he wanted now to just have Black History Month recognized at that level. And he did so on March 4th, 2008. So just wanted to highlight, on OBHS, Jean Augustine and Senator Donald Oliver for their efforts of getting Black History Month celebrated in Canada. Now, as I mentioned, Dr. Jean Augustine, she was born in Grenada. And as I mentioned before, with the large migration of Caribbean people coming in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Jean Augustine was one of them coming in the late 50s, coming to work. It was called the West Indian Domestic Scheme. It was a program that allowed Black women, specifically from the Caribbean, specifically from Jamaica and Barbados, although other women from other Caribbean islands came. But she came through that program, worked for 1 year as a domestic, and then got her permanent residence. And she was a teacher in Grenada, and just saw this as an opportunity to, travel and explore and come and work and, just have more opportunities. So, she was a teacher, a principal here, and then became a politician. And as I mentioned, the first Black Canadian woman to be elected to the House of Commons as well as the federal cabinet. And she was also the first Fairness Commissioner in the province of Ontario. So very important, all that she's done, and she still continues to go around and speak and talk to people about her journey and Black History Month, and yeah, what it means and what it meant to her to be able to do that. All right, so I have another video for us. Mm.
Since the early beginnings of Canadian history, people of African descent have made significant contributions to the development of our great country. The No. 2 Construction Battalion served Canada proudly during the First World War. William Hall became the first Canadian sailor, the first Nova Scotian, and the first Black to receive the Victoria Cross. Mary Ann Shadd Cary was the first woman of African descent to edit a newspaper in North America. African Canadians have made their mark in music, in sports, and continue to make contributions to many aspects of Canadian life. Celebrate our proud heritage. Celebrate Black History Month.
All right, so let's move on. So speaking of African Canadians, Black Canadians, I just want to highlight a few people and just celebrate their life and who they were and what they were able to accomplish. And yeah, just take a look at some important people. So Mary Ann Shadd Cary, she was born in Wilmington, Delaware in 1823. Her 200 year of her birth is actually happening next year. So there's going to be lots of celebrations happening, in the States and here as well. So she was an American, but she was also a Canadian. She got her citizenship when she came here. She was an activist, a journalist, a publisher, a teacher, and a lawyer. So it just blows my mind every time I read about her and her story and all that she did and was able to accomplish. And she was also the first Black woman publisher in Canada. During those times, though, we know that women's rights were just like, bleh, right? We as women weren't treated fairly and didn't have a lot of rights. So for her newspaper called the Provincial Freeman, she actually had to put the name of her friend, Samuel Ringgold Ward, as the editor of the paper, just so that people wouldn't know that a woman was the one who was the editor. Because if people were aware, then, I'm sure they would try to shut her newspaper down very quickly. And the Provincial Freeman was very important. It was a newspaper not only to, advertise jobs and housing for people who use the Underground Railroad to come to Canada, but it just really provided information about the Black community for the Black community in Canada and in the United States as well. And as mentioned, she was very active in the women's suffrage movement. So I just want to show a quick video more about her life as well.
Few entrepreneurs have faced the challenges and hardships encountered by Mary Ann Shadd, one of Canada's early businesswomen. Born as a free person in Wilmington, Delaware in 1823, Mary Ann learned about the importance of freedom at an early age. In 1850, the United States Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, a new law that put her family's freedom and lives in danger. So Mary Ann's family did what so many others did at the time. They pulled up stakes and moved to Canada. She moved to Windsor, across the border from Detroit, where her entrepreneurial spirit flourished. Mary Ann founded an integrated school for the area's growing fugitive slave population, where students of all races could study and learn together. Then, in 1853, Marianne started an anti-slavery newspaper called the Provincial Freeman, making her the first Black woman in North America to establish and edit a newspaper. She wrote about the importance of Black self-reliance and integration into Canadian society. She advised on the need for new Black citizens to insist on fair treatment and equal rights, and she encouraged education and hard work as tools for improvement and advancement. The Provincial Freeman also promoted women's rights and often included the lectures of feminists of the day. Ironically, despite her support for women's rights, initially Marianne did not place her own name as editor on the masthead of the newspaper she founded. Bowing to the rigid gender codes of the 19th century, she listed Samuel Ringgold Ward, a prominent Black abolitionist at the time, as the publisher and editor of the Provincial Freeman. Marianne published her unique and progressive newspaper for 7 years, establishing a circulation not only in Canada, but also in northern cities across the United States. In doing so, she helped change the racist attitudes that prevailed at that time and helped reshape the nation she left and the nation she embraced. That's why, in 1994, the Canadian government designated Mary Ann Shadd a person of national historic significance. By pushing the boundaries and limitations normally associated with her race and gender, Mary Ann blazed a trail not only for Black people, but also for generations of women that would follow.
All right, so that's a bit more about Mary Ann Shadd Carey. Albert Jackson, so he was Toronto's first Black postal carrier. He actually was born into enslavement in the late 1800s, and actually that's so the top picture is the Canada Post stamp, the Black History Month stamp. It came out in 2019, and then the bottom picture is actually just a drawing of his mom, Anne Maria, and he had 7 other siblings, and they made their way via the Underground Railroad to come to Toronto to regain their freedom. 2 of Albert's brothers were actually sold into enslavement in the South. So his mom didn't want any more of her children, being sold. So she, used the Underground Railroad to make her escape to Canada. And just, again, she's somebody else, and his story as well that I'm just in awe of, to take your 7 children by foot from the United States, walking to Canada, obviously with help along the way, but just really speaks to her character and her resolve and her determination to regain their freedom and just have a better life for herself and her children. So that's Albert Jackson. I have a video, but I'm just conscious of time. So if anything, I can send it along to Phoebe or Nicole for you guys to share with those who want it. So I'll just skip that. And just want to quickly talk to you about Rosemary Brown. She was born in Jamaica in 1930, passed away on April 26, 2003 in Vancouver. She was the first Black woman elected to a Canadian provincial legislature. And she actually came from Jamaica, as I mentioned, first to attend McGill University to get her bachelor's degree in 1955. And then went on to the University of British Columbia to get her Bachelor's of Social Work in 1962 and her Master's of Social Work also at University of British Columbia in 1967. Now, she was very active as well, just with women's rights and the rights of Black people in Canada at the time. And that bottom picture is her Canada Post stamp that came out in 2009. So I have a video as well, but again, I'm going to skip it. I will pass it along. I'm just conscious of time. But this quote I wanted to just show you guys and read out. So Jean Augustine, as we discussed, I had the honor of interviewing her for my master's dissertation years ago. But, she said just so many wonderful, amazing things, but this always stayed with me because it really just solidified that We as Black people have always been here in this country. Sometimes mainstream media likes to make it seem that, you know, we just came in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And a lot of us did. And you know, that's wonderful. But our presence and our history and our experiences have been in this country for over 400 years. And this quote that Jean said just really, yeah, relates to that. So that the history of Black people is really a part of Canadian history. The contributions that we made to Canadian history, the contributions that we made to Canadian society are part of the contributions we should have made as Canadians in Canadian society. I think that in every aspect of Canadian life, you can find someone of African descent, of Caribbean descent, of Black participating, and therefore it is essential that that be recognized by society. So Black history is simply Canadian history. Black History Month is wonderful to have. We thank, you know, Jean and all those who helped to get Black History Month contributed, officially recognized and contributed. But you know, it just begs the question of, you know, Black futures and the future of Black Canadian history. And, you know, I've been seeing a lot of Black Future Month and what does that look like? So, yeah, just something we can discuss after if there's time, or if you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them as well. And I always just like to share some resources with those I'm speaking to. Again, I can send these to Phoebe and Nicole to share with those who might want it, but just some books on our experience, more about enslavement in Canada and Emancipation Day. And yeah, so many books and resources to take in. Um, Here's some more books, you know, about the sleeping car porter, the Underground Railroad. That first book is a new edition. That book came out in the 90s. Adrian Shadd, Dr. Fua Cooper, and Dr. Carolyn Smarts Frost. The first edition was in the 1990s. So they've just released their newer edition of the book, more about Africville and Halifax and the rich history that's in Nova Scotia. I always say Nova Scotia is like the epicenter of Black history in Canada. Like there's so many stories, you know, out of there of our history and our experience, and just some articles from the Canadian Encyclopedia, which has a wide range of resources on Black history and the Black experience, and some podcasts highlighting my podcast, Black to Canada. Check it out. I cover the 400 years. I interview people. I share the stories. It's just important to me to document and share our stories with those who are willing to listen. And then just some documentaries and films that you can watch that are free. I just want to highlight the last three. Subjects of Desire is about Black beauty and Black hair in the United States and Canada by Jennifer Holness. That came out on February 1st, but you can still watch it online on TVO. And The Porter, that talks about the sleeping car porters in Canada, comes out February 21st. So what is that? This Sunday is the first episode. I think it's 8 parts. So that's on CBC. And then BLK, An Origin Story, is a 4-part documentary on Black history in Canada. I know they're going to be talking about Nova Scotia, Montreal, Ontario, and I can't remember the last one. I think maybe Vancouver, Black history in British Columbia. So check that out. Premieres on the History Channel starting February the 26th. Lastly, just some of my ongoing projects. Every year I host a Black History Month conference called Looking Back into the Future. And this year it's happening on February 26th. So I'm inviting you all, if you're able to attend, it's from 1 to 3. I'll put the link in the chat if anybody's interested. And as I mentioned, my podcast before. And lastly, I'm releasing my first children's chapter book in March. So next month, based on one of my sons, my 5-year-old Ara. So it's about Black history and meeting Black historical figures and learning about Black history in Canada and his roots and his Jamaican roots on my side and Nigerian roots on my husband's side. And it's going to be a series, and I'm so excited because it's been 4 years in the making. So I'm so grateful for this time and that it's finally coming out. And yeah, stay connected with me. I love to keep in touch, whether it's Twitter, Instagram. I also have a personal, I forgot to put it there, Shannon Oyenaran for Instagram and Twitter as well, and my website. And that is all. Please forgive me for going 3 minutes over. Kiwi and Nicole, I apologize. I am done. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was amazing. You can hear me, right?
I can.
Okay, perfect. That was awesome. Thank you so much for guiding us through. I know it was a little bit quick to kind
Oh,
of
my
go through the
pleasure.
history,
That's okay.
but it
There's so
was,
much more, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, but it was well needed though. I love that. And congratulations on the book. Definitely
Thank
be on the lookout for
you.
that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good, yes. I know I learned a lot just from that coverage. When you were going through everything, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I do not know some of these names. And it just
Hmm.
shows how much our education is so lacking in Canada. And I'm pretty sure you hear that a lot. A lot of
Yes.
these things we were not taught in our schools at all. And it's kind of up to us to figure it out, like this
Mm-hmm.
history. And it's sad that that's the case. Like it takes this month to be able to kind of delve into our history a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And, at the OBHS, we're really trying to like lobby the government, and there's politics and who's in power and all that stuff, but we're really whoever's in power. Every time we're like, have Black history, Canadian Black history in the schools, right, in the
Mhm.
curriculum. Like it should be mandatory, right?
Yeah.
Like I
Exactly.
do a lot of presentations, and I ask the students, okay, what do you know about Black history? And they name off Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, and I'm like, they're wonderful, we love them, but there's like people in this country that you should know about. So yeah, we just try and promote Black history in Ontario and Canada. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing work, exceptional work, and I think it's so well needed, right? Or else you wouldn't be doing this. So
Hmm.
thank you for that. Even
Oh,
as an
my
adult,
pleasure.
I'm still learning a lot how much more these young kids to
Hmm.
kind of know a little bit about Black history and what that entails, right? Because it was even the origins of Black History Month. I didn't even know that,
Hmm.
right? So that was something that I learned today. And when you mentioned Africville, I had only learned about Africville about 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
how staggering is that to be able to just say that out loud, right? And a lot of
Hmm.
people don't know
Hmm.
that history. So yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate you bringing that and
Oh,
centering
no
that here.
problem. No
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot that when we kind of take the past away, what the present moment becomes really meaningless, right? Because our history
Hmm.
really defines who we are right now. And I think the history of enslavement of African people in Canada and African descent, we can't see how it's not connected to our present moment.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
yeah, thank you for that.
Oh,
I think
you're
there's a lot of
welcome.
people in the comments
Mhm.
saying how much they appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And to everybody out there in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat or our Q&A. Oh, someone says, yes, we have to keep going until people are calling off Dr. Augustine and Marianne Shaw's names first. Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
much appreciated. Yeah. Well, I have a few questions or a couple of questions to get us started.
Hmm.
For you, I guess when you had mentioned your own organization, though, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing this
It's
right.
okay. I don't. The Oyenaran Education
Or
Support.
UNER and
Yes.
education support, yes. Thank you.
No
I
problem.
kind of want to know what like inspired you to really start that organization. Um,
Yeah. So myself and my husband, we met in the UK while we were both doing our masters, and after we got married, we just even before we got married, we just talked about what there's always a vision and a purpose for when different relationships, whether that's marriage or friendships or whatever. And one of ours was always just to help people and to help elevate people, and for people to recognize their giftings and their talents, and just to make people aware of those things and to be leaders in their communities. So that was one of our like major things that we wanted to do, to come when we came together as being married. So we started Oh Yes short form in 2015. And yeah, I mean, my Looking Back program falls under that. My husband speaks a lot on vision, right? And understanding what vision is and your giftings and your talents and leadership, right? So he covers that aspect, but just really educating people as well. We're firm believers in education. We send scholarships and stuff back to Nigeria, where he's from, and just trying to really get things going here as well. So yeah, it's just an inspiration for us to be able to help others in any way that we can and to educate. So that's why we mainly started it. Yeah, we just want people to live out their purpose and recognize what that is. Because I'm a firm believer that we all have purpose and giftings and talents, and we should use it while we're here. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's beautiful. I love that. And I can tell there's so much passion in your voice when you talk about it, right? And so much joy in it. I think sometimes everybody, like you were saying, slavery is not only our only history,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot more to it. And it's good to be able to center a lot of those stories, right? Because they get overshadowed, right? And I think that's when
Hmm.
that education piece is so important.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have Molly, who's our other co-host, joining
Okay.
us as well too. Hi, Molly. Yeah, Molly will be taking over in our second half. Just wanted to give her a shout out as well. And I think in the chat, we also have another question. What are your thoughts about Canada always focusing on the free North and not identifying the struggles of Black Canadians in this country?
Yeah, so maybe another session I'll go more into enslavement in Canada and that history and this narrative that kind of came out of enslavement in Canada. When Canada became a country in 1867, it kind of swept its secrets and its negativity and all the bad stuff that they did under the carpet, so to speak, and really put forward this narrative of, oh, we offer freedom, and we want people to come, we want people, African American men and women and their families to come, and they're free, and da 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 da. So they really pushed this narrative forward of the Underground Railroad, and really did not acknowledge, the wrong that they did and continue to do. Black people are just one example. The Japanese, the Chinese, the indigenous people, we've been seeing for the last, year and a bit, all of the things going on with the residential schools specifically, right? So I think Canada has a real problem um, just recognizing or not recognizing the truth. They know the truth, but acknowledging it and talking about it and moving forward. So yeah, that narrative was painted when Canada became a country that we're good and we want everybody to come and freedom and this and that, and really didn't acknowledge, enslavement. And really, as well, like during that time, enslaved people wrote their narratives, right, about their experience and what happened to them. And a lot of those documentations were, not brought to the forefront or destroyed or what have you, right? To really just push this narrative of Canada being good, right? But when you dig deeper, you know that Canada is, I hate to say it, but acts of racism, right? They didn't allow, as I mentioned, Black people into this country until the late 50s, 60s, right? They had very racist immigration policies and purposefully kept Black people out of this country, kept Chinese people, people of Asian descent out of this country because they wanted a specific type of people. But that's another topic conversation. But that's the answer kind of to that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's extreme. Like you just hit the nail right on its head because like we obviously, whenever we think of Canada, we always think of it as like a utopia, right?
Hmm.
But there's such a history here that not a lot of people know of.
Yeah.
And like you said, it gets really hidden. And I think what I've come to understand is that it's so subtle that we
Hmm.
don't realize its effects because it's
Yeah.
not like people say it's not as blatant as what goes on in the United States, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's a type of violence that's even more scary
Yes.
than what we've
Yes.
seen. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Um, I don't see any other questions on here. Maybe I have one more question for you. I guess to kind of tie
Hmm.
back into, because we're talking about wellness with this Black History Month, right? So I guess for you and your sort of your knowledge that you have about history and as an historian, what does the future of wellness look like for you? And which direction do you kind of hope it goes into?
Yeah, the future of wellness. I mean, as a Black woman and as the Black community, I hope that we can um, just really keep tapping into our mental health and where we are with that, and how it ties to history is knowing our history, right? Some of people in our community don't really know the history as well, right? Maybe if they're from somewhere, they know the history of that or their family history, but they don't know the history of, globally Black people. So just knowing that there's so much intergenerational trauma as well that's been passed along to us as well, right? So just recognizing that and working through that and just keep being better and keep being as well as we can be and keep speaking and talking to people and just being the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And if that means, self-care, taking the day off, taking a few weeks off, doing what we have to do to be mentally, physically, emotionally okay, then we need to do that. So, yeah, just knowing who we are, where we've come from, our history, and then making sure that with all that information, we're taking care of ourselves now. And yeah, just doing
Yeah.
what we can do. Yeah.
Mhm. No, thank you for that, though. I think that speaks to a lot of folks here. Definitely does to me as well too. So just kind of centering that joy sometimes, that love and that history, right? And
Mhm.
connecting us back to our roots, right? It's only now that I've started to explore what that really looks like, right? And that's my part of my
Mhm.
own wellness journey. So yeah, very
Mhm.
important what you just said.
Yeah, and just uncovering the joy, as you said, of our history
Mhm.
and the celebration and the accomplishment and the achievements of people who came before us, right? And
Yeah.
that's why, yeah, I just made note that our history didn't start with enslavement. We were so much more than that, right? And when you really read the stories of these kings and queens that came before us, like it's so inspiring, right?
Mhm.
So just yeah, just remembering the joy and the beautiful parts of who we are because we are beautiful and I love us and I wouldn't trade being a Black
Yes.
woman for anything. Like, despite what we go through as a community and the oppression that we face, like, I love us. I sincerely do. And that's where it comes from, like, just, talking to you guys and my passion for us and our community. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, just even having these conversations.
Hmm.
That's also a good start. So thank you so much, Shannon.
You're
That was
welcome.
amazing journey. I know it was short, but
Yeah.
we appreciate you bringing it here.
No problem.
Um, we are going to move into our next panelist, which involves everybody kind of getting a little bit more interactive and centering ourselves in a little bit of yoga. So I'm going to pass it over to Molly, and she's going to take it over from here.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Our next panelist is Natasha Eck, and as we all know, our overall being, it's you know, especially to get our mental health in check. It can comprise of a lot of things: eating well, exercising, sleeping, right, and just maintaining positive relationships with others. So Natasha is going to engage us into Chematic Flow, which is an organization. She works for Flow, sorry, which is an organization that makes holistic wellness accessible through the practice of Chematic yoga. And their vision is to promote all aspects of a journey of wellness, highlighting indigenous self-care tools that help bring balance, peace, and liberation. In addition, they advocate for the importance of creating work-life balance, always putting well-being at the forefront. They facilitate stress management workshops, which are designed to support corporate organizations in building holistic strategies that integrate with resiliency training for its employees. Now, the movement specialist, kinetic yoga practitioner, and educator Natasha Eck has created and facilitated movement workshops and programs for organizations across Canada for well over a decade. She offers expertise in guiding clients to experience the benefits of intentional movement and how biomechanics support physical and mental well-being. Everybody, let's welcome Natasha Eck.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Greetings to everybody. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Yes, if you want to join this practice, please raise your hand so that we can show your cameras. I'm much appreciated for that. This is so wonderful. What an opportunity just to talk about wellness and as it relates to us as Black peoples in the context of something like Kemetic yoga. I'm going to share like a really brief presentation before we start to move. I really want to share the practice so that you can actually witness it and feel it for yourselves. But I just wanted to also share some background around the roots of Kemetic yoga and the lineages of it as well, just so that people can, you know, just receive that information as well. So as we go into it, there may be more of a connection for you. So is it okay if I share my screen right now? Okay, there we go. Share. So hopefully you're able to see my screen. Everybody can see it. I'm going to go back up here. So I just put this quote here at the beginning because I thought that it was relevant and important. So holistic wellness is the result of reconnecting to ourselves, to our ancestry, our traditions and ancient modes of self-care. So Kemetic yoga, carved on the back of a wooden chair found in the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, is the image of a man called Shu. Shu represents the concept of breath. His long curved beard indicates the ancient Egyptians of Kemetic people viewed him as the nectar or force of energy. In the ancient Egyptian scientific system of cosmology, the science of creation, Shu not only represents the concept of the breath we breathe and which gives us life to our physical bodies, but also the atmosphere that surrounds the earth and one of the four elements of creation. So the elements being earth, air, fire, and water. So yoga has traditionally been assumed to have originated in India. So yoga associated with India is not only represented in Egypt, but also in other parts of Africa and in places in the Western Hemisphere where Africans traveled thousands of years before Columbus. So yoga of Egypt is older than that found in India. Historical records state that the original people of India, as did all the people of the world, migrated out of northeastern Africa, where Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia are presently located and settled in the valley of the Indus River. The original civilization of India began here under the people called the Dravidians. The Dravidians were Africans who built great cities, cultivated the land and lived peacefully in harmony with nature. This area of Africa, where the ancestors of the Dravidians came from, were once known as Kush or Kush. The people of this Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Southern Arabia were part of the same ethnic group. They're common descendants of the Black Nubian people who today inhabit southern Egypt and Sudan, and who founded the original Egyptian civilization. So the people of ancient Egypt practiced a unique style of yoga or movements that probably predates, as I said before, the yoga of India. And the practice and philosophy of yoga in India was performed by knowledge that came out of Africa. So our ancestors knew that in order to function at their highest level and be able to be in tune with their purpose and be a part of community and create all these wonderful things like mathematics and engineering and give the world all of these things, that there's needed to be a certain amount of balance within the body, a balance within the community, and be in harmony with all things. So they knew that, you know, if there was a headache or something, they'd know that there'd need to be a certain movement that would need to happen, or maybe there was a sort of food that you need to eat. There'd be all different things, like somebody mentioned earlier before. It's not just one thing that is wellness. It is made up of many things, and our ancestors knew that. Our ancestors understood that. The lineage of this practice is created by a person called Yusir Ra-Hotep, who is the master instructor and creator of the technique that I'm actually going to be sharing today. He's the most senior instructor of Kemetic yoga in the United States, with over 45 years of practice and teaching. He did the original research and documentation of Kemetic yoga. And also with Dr. Asir Happy. And their research consisted of looking at the ancient text, hieroglyphics and reports, and doing this really in-depth research and looking at the configurations of these images that were found on the temples of Kemet to create this technique, to bring this technique together. So the Yoga Skills technique of Kemetic yoga puts emphasis on the alignment of the vertebrae column of the spine. So many of the poses are triangular and mimic the geometrical configuration of a pyramid. So you're going to see a lot of the movement that will look like that. Emphasis is placed on the rejuvenation of the entire body and mind, not just the physical development of the outer muscles and flexibility. So I'm not going to be asking us to fold into a pretzel and balance on one toe. It's not about that. It's really, really about working with the breath and the body and being able to look at wellness as an act of resistance. The ability to be able to focus on yourself and emit any distractions away from yourself so that you are able to focus on working in harmony with the breath that is provided to us, around us, and let the body, in fact, benefit from that, work in harmony, because our bodies are quite brilliant, right? So mostly important, the emphasis is on the control of the breath, and the breath is the life force. We can go without food and water for a few days, but with our breath, if the breath is taken away, we cannot continue. It's life force energy. And that's what the foundation of this practice is about. Breathing. When we're anxious, when we're feeling stressed, the first thing that gets affected is our breath. Our blood pressure rises. Throughout the day, if you're sitting in front of a computer, our bodies start to, form all these different ways of being just to accommodate how we're living in our life. Our ancestors were very active. Our ancestors were constantly moving, taking care of the land, taking care of their homes, and life has changed a lot since then, obviously. But the ways in which that we can thrive is to make sure that we are well, make sure that we remember these ways of being, to take care of our bodies. So hopefully this evening you're able to join me now